Well, if we're going to talk about the problems that we have, we may as well get to the solutions, or at least ideas for the solutions to the problems that we have. And I find that usually works best over a cigar. Welcome to the show, everybody. Good to be with you. Presented by Nuts, Let's Go Bourbon. That's my book, by the way, available at Amazon.com or wherever fine books are sold. The Bourbon Reader you've always needed. It's presented by Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org, and I am smoking the Chief. Now, you may have never heard of the Chief. This is a cigar out of Long Island. This guy, Ken, who did work for the fire department, made this cigar. It's a Habano, a wrapper, Nicaraguan in the binder and in the filler with a little bit of a Honduran in there. He's a boutique cigar maker. And what I love about the cigar is that, you don't find it everywhere. That much is true. You can find it at his website. What is it? KJDcigars.com. KJDcigars.com. And you can get one of these. I'm a fan of it. I think it's a nice, easy smoke, and really doesn't put too much pressure on the palate. So if you're looking for something that'll give just the right amount of flavor, but not necessarily overwhelming, I think this is a nice choice to do. I did a straight cut, and yeah, a little touch uneven there. A touch uneven. It's gonna happen, even with professionals like me. Don't worry about it. You can cut a little bit more, or you can just say, you know what, it's totally fine. And then on my Firebird lighter right here, I don't have a lighter sponsor yet. I just want to let you know what I was using. But if you want to sponsor the lighters, you can. And I do it, in this fashion with a little more up and down than others. You can do this, but sometimes the heat rises too much to the finger. So you can just slightly move it a little bit. This is the way I like it, with that little more up down kind of way. Really kind of move the heat around it right there. You don't want to get, burning the wrapper or anything like that. The wrapper is the flavor, of course. And then, and there we go. Off to the races. This border conversation has really become fascinating because finally people are recognizing that the southern border is a serious issue. It's not the issue of Texas. It's not the issue of Arizona, New Mexico, California, or Florida, where Joe Biden has flown illegal immigrants to. It is an American problem. And one of the ways I address this, and you might find this helpful in how you have this conversation, always remember and always note that when people are coming from Venezuela, where they are escaping communism, that much is true, whether they're coming from Colombia or Nicaragua or El Salvador or Mexico, remember that they're not looking to make that 1,000-mile journey to get to Texas or Arizona. They're trying to get to the United States. And therefore, it's a United States problem. So when 50 illegal immigrants get taken to Martha's Vineyard, it's not human trafficking. It's not kidnapping. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said we should look to ways to charge Governor DeSantis with kidnapping. Now, you understand he's going after DeSantis because Newsom is running for president and he sees DeSantis as his number one threat. That makes perfect sense politically. However, his conversations are just simply ridiculous. It's not kidnapping. You are taking people who came to the United States and now placing them somewhere in the United States. Why should Martha's Vineyard somehow be immune to something that affects all of us? Why should Chicago? Why should DC? Why should New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles? My beloved Indianapolis, I assume, will eventually see some people. Why? Because if it is indeed an American problem, America has to deal with the problem. And slowly but surely, bit by bit, we're actually getting some mayors who recognize that the problem is that Congress isn't doing anything. This is the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser.
So, this morning, 2 more buffaloes and migrants were dropped off in front of the vice president's house.
My phone was here.
Well, you've heard me say throughout this experience
my
since
phone
April
was
that
on
we
the
have a national
table
problem
before you guys
that is
said
going
I
to
was right here
require
in the
a national
corner.
response. And we're going to do all that we can in D.C. to make sure that people have a humane welcome and transfer to their final destinations. But we see in the months ahead that this problem could worsen.
A humane transfer, a humane welcome. I have no issue with humane. I think we would all agree that the United States is humane and that all this is humane as well. Martha's Vineyard, it should be noted, dealt with 50 illegal immigrants for one day and then put them on buses out of Martha's Vineyard. They didn't open up their homes, and there's stories of people yelling and screaming at each other. Why didn't you open up your home? Hey, Barack Obama, you got all those bedrooms there at Martha's Vineyard. You're not really worried about global warming because you bought a place quite literally on the ocean. Why don't you take in some people? But that's not how it went down. I'm not saying the people at Martha's Vineyard treated anybody poorly. I'm saying they didn't want to deal with the problem. Well, Del Rio doesn't have that option. El Paso doesn't have that option. As a matter of fact, El Paso is so overwhelmed that they allowed 1,000 people here illegally onto the streets. They couldn't hold them. Border Patrol is taking on too much, can't handle it because the people coming across the border believe that the border is open. They believe this because they believe Joe Biden is an open borders guy. And why shouldn't they believe it? After all, look at the progressives that run the party, people in the squad and others who absolutely believe in open borders. Remember that Representative Ocasio-Cortez, under the days of President Trump, refused to vote for more beds for the border. Why? Why should there be beds at the border? We should have open borders. We should let them in. If you're not voting for the border or for beds at the border to take care of people, it's because you don't believe there should be a border to begin with. That's what happened. And that's what is happening. So when we talk about solutions, how about we start with the idea that we first set the stage? The border is not open to illegal immigration. The border is open to legal immigration always. We are a nation that has immigrants. We are a nation that has taken in immigrants throughout its history. I'm here because they took in my grandmother. But when they took in my grandmother, as the story is told to me, she came with 4 other sisters, 5 of them, escaping Poland in the early 30s, except one sister got sent back because she had an earache. I will tell this. That's absolutely true. Got sent back, separated from other sisters and sent back. I will tell you that in all the time I ever spoke to my grandmother, she never once said America was horrible, despicable, bigoted. It never happened. It never got discussed. There were rules. And, well, this is one of those things that took place. Do I think now we would stop somebody from entering the country because of an earache? Gosh, I hope not. I really and truly hope not. But there are reasons not to let people into the country. We have to start by ensuring that people understand all around the globe that the United States doesn't have just this gigantic open door and no system of checks. So I believe we have to start by shutting it down. Now, that's a pretty harsh move, but follow me on the thesis. You have to set the stage that, no, we don't just let people waltz into the country. You don't allow people to waltz into the country. We are a sovereign nation. We have rules, and the rules must be followed. I'm not worried about the NGOs. I don't want to hear about, well, this lawsuit or that lawsuit. The president decides immigration policy. And I believe that one of the reasons it's important to vote, one of the reasons it's important to elect the right people is so you can set policies that matter. Now, you may argue that shutting it down is an extreme measure. I won't disagree with that. My argument is you have to set the stage. You have to start with position number 1, which is we do not have an open border. We do not allow what it is that's happening, and you should know this. Now, I'll go to also number 2. We don't allow able-bodied men into the country. This also may be considered extreme by some, not by me at all. If you are from Colombia or El Salvador or somewhere like that, and you believe your country has issues, I'm not saying no. I'm saying you're going to have to go fight for your country. That has to happen. What is happening in these places? Why aren't you standing up to cartels or others? I didn't say it wasn't going to be ugly. I didn't say that it wasn't going to be even deadly. I'm asking a question. Don't you have a country that you need to stand up for? There's an argument about whether people in the United States would really stand up for the United States if the United States was in trouble. And that frightens the daylights out of me because I have to believe I'm going to stand up for my country. If we're talking about women and children, we may have a different view of that than we do of able-bodied men. I felt this way about Afghanistan. I had no issue with helping people get out of Afghanistan. I had zero issue whatsoever with it. I would have rather we had gone out of Afghanistan correctly. We didn't cost 13 service members their lives in this botched withdrawal, and that is all on President Biden. But people who wanted to get out of the country, people who helped us, absolutely. But if you tell me that able-bodied men were trying to get out of the country, no, you can't let the Taliban take over your country. Now, maybe there's a little bit of back and forth there, because in the 20 years that we were engaged in building an Afghan military, we didn't build a proper Afghan military. We created a military based on the United States that is a military based on air support. But if you took away the air support, what were they supposed to do? Maybe the Afghan military had to be built on light infantry or something like that. The mistakes made are worthy of study, so we don't ever repeat those mistakes. I've now brought up two solutions, two parts of solving this problem. First, let's set the standard that we don't have an open border. And then let's be clear that able-bodied men need to be able to try and solve the problems in their own country, because there is a difference between men and women. And anybody who wants to disagree with me about that is more than welcome to. I believe they are wrong. This is Brenda. Brenda, what's going on? Brenda, how are you? There's a city in Texas that has a population of 38,000 with 47,000 illegals that have invaded their town. Yes, it is NIMBY, not in my backyard. NIMBY. Washington, D.C. has made this argument. We're being overrun. They've gotten 8,000 illegal immigrants in a town, a metro of 700,000 people. That is different than places like Del Rio and others, and what you're having the conversation about there, Brenda, which is, of course, the fact that these border towns are being absolutely overrun. Absolutely overrun. And yet we have people who want to say, well, that's their problem. How dare you make it our problem? They're coming to the United States. It is all of our problems. This is Mayor Lori Lightfoot of Chicago.
The federal government has to step up. I was in Washington, D.C. last week talking to members of Customs and Border Patrol, National FEMA, ICE, and DHS. And we made it very clear, I made it very clear, that our expectation is that they were going to have a plan that features communication and collaboration with interior cities. And they must do that, and they must do that soon. I know that they are under enormous pressures. This is not a new challenge at the border, but this is a new challenge for us, and we need federal support, resources, communication, and collaboration, and that has to come in short order.
I have no doubt that this is a new challenge for you, Mayor Lightfoot. This is the daily challenge for Texas and for Arizona, New Mexico, California. This is a daily challenge in what they're now doing to Florida, a daily challenge. And yes, it is all of our challenge. And yes, Congress needs to do more. Congress has done nothing on this subject. There are a fair amount of people who would rather have the issue than any solving of the issue. They think the issue is good. They think the issue is something to campaign upon. And then they say, look at how inhumane the Republicans are. Look how little they care. We heard this from Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, and a bunch of others. That kind of talk does need to be pushed back upon. And you start with, and we talk about solutions, don't ever tell me this is about immigration. This isn't about immigration. This is about illegal immigration. And how dare you, whoever the you may be, conflate the issues? You're purposefully, willfully lying to the American people, to yourself, to anybody watching you on TV or listening to you on radio or video or anything like that, because you're not willing to admit the problem is illegal immigration. You think it's all one and the same, or you want us to believe it's all one and the same, and it's not all one and the same. They are different things, and we need to treat them as different things. And when you see people, when you meet people who aren't willing to separate that out, you're talking about unserious people, and they should be told that they're unserious. Until you're willing to honestly address the conversation, we can't solve anything, and you're not willing to be honest. So why in the world would I talk to you about it? You're unserious. That has to get said, and said very, very often. Now, by the way, I really do like this cigar. This is the Toro, by the way, 6.5 by 52. So 6.5 inches long, the Chief here, and that's the name of the cigar. And the 52 is the ring gauge. That's the diameter of the cigar. How thick it is around. A 64 ring gauge would be a full 1 inch around. That's an uncomfortable thing for me. The mouthfeel just doesn't work for it. This 52, more the top end of where I like to be for a cigar. CNN then had Ken Burns, the documentarian, on the show, who made some weird type of parallel to DeSantis Governor DeSantis of Florida sending illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard and the Holocaust. If you know me at all, I despise the people who use the Holocaust as a crutch, who denigrate the Holocaust. It's the same way when you call people Nazis. It's beyond despicable. If you disagree with somebody, it doesn't make them a Nazi. The Nazis were, and there are some people who may want to bring that back. Trust me, they're not my friends. You know, when you see people marching in Charlottesville saying Jews will not replace us, on behalf of the Jews, we're not looking to replace you. A fair amount of us are doctors, and you live in your mom's basement. You're walking around with a tiki torch. We'll stick with our life. Thank you very much. Not trying to replace you. Don't want to be you. Would rather not know you. But this idea that everybody you disagree with is a Nazi is disgusting, and it denigrates the Holocaust. It has to stop. The Holocaust is not a political prop. It's not your crutch. But DeSantis responded to this.
I saw somebody on CNN try to say, sending 50 illegal aliens to wealthy Martha's Vineyard is reminiscent of the Holocaust. And I just thought to myself, has the world gone totally mad? I mean, these are voluntary transportation that they're signing up for, but they're given a good ride, they're given everything, and that's just, it's a humane thing to do.
The world has gone totally mad because we can't get a country to agree with the idea that we're allowed to have a border. But as you heard from Mayor Bowser of D.C., Mayor Lightfoot of Chicago, there are some people starting to recognize we really have to do something here. So how do we get Congress to engage and to act? Well, let's start with something that hopefully we can all agree on, and that's fentanyl, this drug that is killing everybody that it touches. Fentanyl has to stop coming into the country. So let's start with the hard line on fentanyl. If you walk into the country with fentanyl, you go to jail. Now, we could decide that we're going to build jails and keep them here. We could decide to send them back to whatever country they're from, but they're never allowed back, and their relatives aren't allowed back, and their children aren't allowed back. We don't allow anybody in who even thinks about engaging with fentanyl. And if it means the United States has to start getting very, very tough with Mexico and these cartels and cracking down, look, you can tell me that the cartels are tough and I won't disagree. You can tell me the situation is dangerous. I'll agree wholeheartedly. But if I have to choose between us and them, I choose us. And I believe that we have the capacity to solve this, even if we have to use force and even if we have to get aggressive about it. You can't allow fentanyl into the country. It's killing people. You have to put an end to it. If we can't agree on a hard line about fentanyl, well, then, dear Lord, we have no shot in solving the border. You have to start by making sure people know that the border is not open, willy-nilly, not open to everybody. You have to start by saying there are certain people like able-bodied men who cannot come into the country. Now, you say to me, Tony, well, what about people who work and work visas? I actually favor work visas. I'm trying to set a standard by which we don't engage open borders. The people who want to use work visas, well, those are people who are coming in legally. That's a totally different conversation. You can't just let people waltz through the door. If we can't agree on the fentanyl issue, we have no shot. We also have no shot if we think somehow Hillary Clinton has answers.
Some politicians would rather not only have an issue, but exacerbate it to the extent of literally human trafficking, as you said. And so many other Americans, I happen to believe still the majority of Americans are good-hearted and generous. And when people end up on their doorstep in need, they're going to respond. They're going to feed them and house them. And the kids in the AP Spanish class are going to be let out of high school so they could go and translate. You know, that's the kind of American spirit that we try to celebrate at the Clinton Global Initiative. Let's roll up our sleeves and get things done. Because, Joe, it is so clear that despite efforts, and when I was in the Senate, I think probably when you were in Congress, there was a lot of talk about immigration reform, and we kept trying to get close. And in fact, the Senate, when I was there, we passed a bill to actually deal with this. Nobody wants open borders who has any idea of how governments and countries work.
Yet we have many people who want open borders. But it's nice to hear Hillary Clinton calling out Representative Ocasio-Cortez. That's a dream. But if you say Republicans are engaged in human trafficking, you're just wrong. But we have Hillary Clinton making the rounds on TV. She doesn't matter. She's not popular in her own party. This is a ridiculous way of trying to, and you see this in media, attack Republicans, attack Republicans, attack Republicans. I'm not interested in your holy damn attack. I'm interested in solving the problem. That's why I pulled out a cigar, and we're talking right now, solving the problem. That's what matters. The one thing she's right about is that some people want it as cause. This conversation first came to me as the idea of Palestinians as cause versus Palestinians as state. And the theory was that what you saw, and you still see when people talk about the plight of the Palestinians, they don't actually want to solve it. They want to use it as a way to gin people up for votes or for fundraising or for attacks, things like that. Because if we want to engage the Palestinians as a state, they have to be able to govern themselves. And the first opportunity, they ended up allowing Hamas to be in charge. Now, many Palestinians don't want Hamas in charge. They've tried to fight Hamas, and they themselves get attacked. Until you get rid of these terrorist entities, Hamas and Hezbollah and their funder, the mullahs, the hardliners, and the clerics, the Ayatollah of Iran, you're still going to have the problem. But cause versus state, I always thought that was a fascinating conversation. There are people who don't want to solve this issue with immigration because they want the issue so they can claim, look how terrible and look how awful and look how horrible. And then there are some people who understand that this is a great way to absolutely destroy the United States. Some people want to go Clara Piven. Some people want to talk about it being a part of cultural Marxism. However you want to describe it, it's fact. This damages us. This hurts us. This will destroy us. So simply, it has to be stopped. So good on Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis and Governor Ducey of Arizona for making this a conversation that America now has to recognize. And you're hearing more and more people saying, well, we got to do something about this. Yes, we do. I've offered up some of my solutions right there. Let me go to the comments right here. This is Freddie. What's up, Freddie? I'm guessing it's our tax dollars that pays for the immigrants to have a place to stay and who knows what else. Well, yes, in great measure, it is indeed our tax dollars that do exactly that. It's our tax dollars that absolutely pay for all the things that we're seeing. What's interesting about the Martha's Vineyard conversation is who on Martha's Vineyard, and I'm sure there were some, but who on Martha's Vineyard was offering to house, offering to feed, say, oh, they can stay with us. These places, and I'm not saying it's solely Martha's Vineyard, that claim sanctuary city or sanctuary status or embrace the idea that they're good, loving, kind, decent. What did they do in this case? What do they do when it ends up at their doorstep? They complain, they scream, they holler, they say, how dare you? And they accuse DeSantis and Abbott and Ducey of despicableness when it's not despicableness. They're letting us know about a problem, and it isn't incumbent upon Texas to deal with the entirety of border issues. It is the purview of the United States. It is the federal government that has to do something, and this is a problem that has to get solved. I'm glad they're doing something about it. Now, this is Carol. The same thing is true with the abortion issue. They don't want to solve it either because they can point fingers and create fear, which turns into votes. I would argue the difference here is that this wrong policy of Roe v. Wade was properly overturned because Roe v. Wade, I think, was properly decided. It was a usurpation of states' rights. The states have to make decisions, and each state is going to make its own decision. This is different than how we deal with immigration because this is the purview of the federal government. You could talk about it constitutionally with Article 4, Section 4, that we are guaranteed a republic form of government and that we will protect the nation from invasion. People really bristle when you talk about invasion. I don't know. Does everyone have to be in uniform, marching in a line, carrying a firearm in order for it to be an invasion? I don't think that is necessarily the way it has to be. This is solely the purview of the federal government as opposed to abortion, which is now the purview of the states, which is why I oppose this Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, that legislation, which says we should have a ban at 15 weeks. It's not the 15 weeks so much that bothers me. That's well in line with where the world is because most nations do have a cap, right? It isn't a banning of abortion. It isn't an attack on women's bodies. Not at all. That's not what it is, certainly compared to the rest of the world. I like the idea that the states decide, and certain states will decide certain things, and there will be lawsuits, and there will be conversation, there'll be voting. The Republic, it's messy, but it's absolutely the best game going. Cigars and Solutions. I'm starting a conversation here. I don't know if I've got every right solution. There might be better solutions out there. I'm all ears. But if we don't start with a recognition that the border is not open and letting the world know, well, then we can't get anything done. If we don't start by saying you may have to go fight for the future of your country, we can't get anything done. And if we can't agree about fentanyl and stopping fentanyl coming from across the border by being very aggressive, including force, we can't get anything done. That's the way it is. It is the chief right here, and that website, I always forget the name of it, KJ, it's actually right there. You can actually see it at the bottom, kjdcigars.com. That is the chief right there that I am smoking. Have a wonderful weekend. Get yourself a cigar, relax, and take it easy. And my thanks to the good people at Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org. Greatly appreciate them. Guys, I don't know, maybe I'll catch you over the weekend. I don't know. I'm here. It's gonna be some nice weather. Maybe we'll do it again. I'll catch you later. And don't forget, find everything. TonyKatz.locals.com. TonyKatz.locals.com. That's where you go. I'll catch you next time. Take care.